Welcome to session 11. This time we're going to look at the Old Testament overview and narrative. So let me just give you an overview of the Old Testament. The Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. There's history, a lot of historical books in the scriptures, books like 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, Judges, all talking about the history of the people of God in the nation of Israel. You have poetry and writings, books like Song of Songs, Proverbs, Psalms. Then you have major prophets and minor prophets. The difference, my friends, it's simply its length. Major prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Minor prophets like Amos, Habakkuk, Malachi. The Old Testament, a lot of it, 40% of the Old Testament is actually narrative storytelling. So let's zoom in on that. That the Bible contains more types of literature called narrative than it does of any other type. So we need to do some work in best preparing you and me to read these well. The following books are largely or entirely composed of narrative material: Genesis, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, Kings and Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Job. That narratives are stories. That but they're not just fictional, they're God's stories. Stories that are true, important, and complex. So that's what a narrative is. It's just a story of God at work in this particular time and place. So the purpose of narratives is to show God at work in his creation and among the people. That these narratives glorify him and help us to understand and appreciate the way that God has been providential and in protection of his people. So I think of the book of Exodus, which is a story of God's people being released out of slavery from Egypt. Really the foremost paradigm of salvation in the Old Testament. That story is about God bringing Israel out of all of these disasters time and time again. How are they going to get out of Egypt? Well, the plagues. Now that they're in the desert, how are they going to drink? Well, and then he gives them water from a rock and manna in the desert. That God is acting in history in this way, giving his providence. And so that's what narratives show. There's 3 levels of narratives. The first, kind of widest one up here, is a universal plan of God worked through his creation from all of time. This is redemptive history, and that's still going on today. The next level down is the history of Israel. My friends, if you want to be good Bible readers, it is so crucial to understand the history, election, of the people of God in the nation of Israel. It's the primary way that God is working in the Old Testament, through a theocracy in the nation of Israel. And in the New Testament, the mind-blowing fact of the New Testament is not just Jews are welcomed into the story of God, but Gentiles as well. So this is the second level here of narratives, this narrative, the story of the people of Israel. And then you go down, the most individualistic level is the narrative of people. People in the Bible like Joshua, or Moses, or Gideon, or Hannah, or Deborah. In the New Testament, people like Apollos, or Paul, or all of these people. How is God working in the lives, stories of those people? Here's what narratives aren't, all right? Important things. Here's what they're not. They're not just stories about people who lived in the Old Testament. They are first and foremost stories about what God did through those people. So we don't just want to highlight these people and say, how do I be like David? Now, there are moments where we need to learn how to be like David. He did great things. He danced before God unashamed. But there are also parts of David's life that we should not do, like sleeping in the wrong bed with Bathsheba. And so we need to be careful not to idolize these stories, these narratives, and these characters. What we want to do instead is to say, how is this person like Jesus? Because Jesus is the hero of the Bible. So let's be careful to not idolize or make heroes of these people in Old Testament narratives. Secondly, Old Testament narratives are not allegories or stories filled with hidden meanings. Sometimes we look at them and like, well, this means this and this means that. Unless the Bible is saying this means this and that means that, let's not do that. Oftentimes we look at it as like a code to be cracked. Probably not all the time a code to be cracked. Let's continue. Thirdly, Old Testament narratives do not always teach directly. Sometimes there are often illustrations that are fulfilled other places, meanings drawn other places. Think about Abraham sacrificing Isaac. All right, that story is most fulfilled, most understood with Jesus, with the Father and Jesus and the cross, that actually God does sacrifice his son when Abraham did not. Finally, Old Testament narratives do not necessarily have a moral all of its own. So let's be careful to draw immediate morals or lessons from Old Testament texts and narratives, because sometimes they're not pointing that way. All right, with that in mind, what I want you to do is I want you to read a famous Old Testament narrative in 1 Samuel 18, the story of David and Goliath, in light of this information. Enjoy.